in our regular martial arts classes, we do these things called katas or forms or whatever. Wouldn't it be a really good idea if we had some type of practical applications for what we're actually doing?
Like make it work for self-defense?
That would be great.
That would be awesome.
I might be able to help with that.
Yeah,
whoa, hey, man.
As if by magic.
Welcome to the Impact Defense Podcast. We're dedicated to giving you the information that you need to help keep you safe. Now, let's join our hosts, Brian and Jada.
All right, guys. So as you heard, we are joined by Iain Abernethy today. So just in case that we are in a different kind of audience and the listener does not have a real traditional kind of martial arts background, I would love to hear a little bit about you. How did you get started in the martial arts?
Well, I started when I think I was about 11 years old. My father used to go to the library, come back with books for us, for those who might remember libraries before the days of the internet. And one of the books he brought back was a martial arts book. So I was kind of fascinated by it. Not long after that, I think it was Enter the Dragon aired on British TV, possibly the first time it had been on TV. So I thought, right, I've got to learn this stuff. So a couple of my school friends were already learning karate. So I decided I'd go along with them to the class. There was a grading the week after. They quit the week after when they failed the gradings. And on my first class, I got punched in the guts and dropped on my knees. So it wasn't a great start, you know. So, but then, you know, very quickly, I thought, no, I enjoyed this. You know, it was, or at least I wanted to be good at it. You know, I can't say I enjoyed it initially, but I knew I wanted to be good at it. So, and that was a Wadaroo karate club. Under Doug James, who's ranked 8th dan now. In this part of the world, you know, if you do karate, you do it under him. You know, I mean, he's one of the main instructors here. So trained with Doug for a very long period of time. Later on, the self-defense side of things started to get more interesting to me. So Jeff introduced me to Jeff Thompson, like leading self-defense author. They'd met outside of the martial arts and started training with Jeff. Through Jeff, I got introduced to Peter Considine, who I train with regularly as well. Both Peter and Jeff got a lot of real life experience and are fantastic at teaching it. So all of that kind of gets fused together into to what I do now. And the thing I'm probably best known for is the Kata application side of things, yeah. Because I remember the first time I saw Kata, I can remember it vividly. So I'd be about 11 years old. I'm a kid in the class waiting for it to start. Quite a nervous kid, so I'm sitting by the side, not doing anything, just waiting for the class to start. And one of the orange belts, who I guess was probably mid to late 20s, was running through Pinan Nidan. So I didn't know what a Kata was, but I saw this thing and like, whoa. You know, what's that? Now, looking back, is an orange belt Pinan Nidan. It probably wasn't the most precise form, you know. Yeah. But I remember thinking that whatever that was, I'm interested in it. So I think over time, the fact that Kata just appealed to me on some level. And then the fact I was always interested in, I did the sports stuff too, and enjoyed that for what it was, and, you know, competing in karate tournaments and judo tournaments and stuff. But I always felt that the self-defense side of things was a more honest measure. Do you know what I mean? You know, you can change your rules overnight, and you were good yesterday and you're not good today. But there's something that as a baseline to measure your progress against. I thought it was always a good thing. So that got me exploring the Kata and sharing my views on that, and that kind of took off.
We when coming up, I love the sparring. I love the self-defense. I love the grappling portions of it. I did not like the Kata. And I think for me, it was a big portions of not understanding what you were actually doing in the moment. It was just a performance, and I had no interest in performance art, which is what it felt like for a long time.
Yeah, I think that's true. A lot of people, because you can go down that route. You know, I know people who like the Kata as movement, as artistic expression. You know,
Kylie does.
Yeah, you know, I'm not adverse to that either. There's days where I'll do a Kata and I'm not really thinking about the applications of it. I just felt that I felt good doing that. You know what I mean? So there's a hill just at the back of my house, one of the fells, we call them in this part of the world. So I can run up that top of the fell in about 15 minutes. It's a nice, good, steep run. And from the top, like, on a good day, I can see across the island. You can see over the sea to Scotland. You've got the mountains in the background. Sometimes when I run up there, while I'm catching my breath before I run down, I'll walk through a few katas and I'm just enjoying the movement for movement's sake. But I think when you start breaking down the applications and stuff, you understand it a little bit more.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a depth to it. I mean, it's an old analogy, but it's like listening to someone sing a beautiful song in a foreign language. On one point of view, you can go, well, that sounds really nice. You know, like you can look at a cat and go, that looks really nice. But it's when you understand it and you go, oh, I get the meaning of it. I get the way this all fits together. And to me, it's fascinating breaking them down and understanding the lessons within them.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was to a point myself where I was just about ready to abolish Kata because I was so aggravated with it myself as a teacher. And my instructor was like, look, if you want to, we're a very small organization. We come a very small Kyokushin organization. And he told me, he said, at some point in time, he said, if you get your black belt and after you do your stuff, he said, if that's the way you want to go, then that's your choice. Mm-hmm. And actually, to be honest with you, I ran across some of your stuff and I was like, oh man, maybe this stuff actually makes sense. So, so
it's my fault.
Yeah, it's your fault.
I know that experience is a common one, though. I know I've got training partners and friends who abandoned Kata. And I wouldn't necessarily they were wrong for doing that either, because for them it's work. You know what I mean? They got rid of it. But the reason, and there are things from my traditional background that I have got rid of, you know, that as time's gone on, I thought, you know, I'm not seeing what this is supposed to achieve. I'm not seeing the value in it, or there's a better way to do this.
Right.
So I'm not wedded to tradition for the sake of tradition, but the Kata, they give me a structure to teach around. They make sure I'm covering all the different elements. They make sure I'm teaching trapping, grappling, throwing, as well as all the close range striking stuff. You know, it becomes a spine of what we do. So I always think if I got rid of that, I'm going to have to reorganize everything else. You know, I'm going to have to find another thing to kind of organize them around. And I think one of the things, you know, that this pandemic has showed people is that it's useful to have a form of solo training that's productive as well, you know, not just because, you know, we're at a once in 100 years pandemic, but also, you know, like you wake up at early in the morning, like I often do, and I think, I want to train. None of my friends want to train at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
I mean, so what do? Well, I can hit the bag and that's all very good. I can do some fitness training, great. But, you know, I can also do some Kata too, and I'm rehearsing all those movements. I'm visualizing what I'm doing to an opponent. It supports all the partner training. And there's a physical fitness side to them too that I think people forget about. You know, when you do them right, they're taken out of you. You run through a few Kata. Yeah. It's just getting the key to understand them. That's the key bit, I think.
Yeah. We do these seminars quite often. I'm running reality-based seminars almost every weekend. And we did an integrated combatives seminar where we were doing everything from hand-to-hand to knife stuff to blunt force to actually even firearms. And I ran this thing. It was a 3-day seminar. And we were doing a lot of clinch work because so much of self-defense happens in that really, really close range. And we were talking about getting inside and isolating an arm and having the other hand up. And then I had a student go through all that. After it was all over, the very next day, Monday, he comes back to class and we're working Kata stuff again. And when he came back in, we were actually doing the application for the circle block. And he was really struggling with it. And I pulled him to the side and said, hey, man, look, I said, that's the exact same thing you were just doing all weekend. From here, and I got him in the clinch, and then I backed up and I said, look, see? Oh, man. And I think that was one of those moves for me that kind of like proved it to me, you know? Yeah. Once I was like, oh, it lines up so perfectly. So.
Yeah, it's just seeing it through the right eyes as well, I think, because your point about, you know, self-defense is within arm's length, right? You know what I mean? You know, they're further away than that, they're not normally that great a problem. Conversation range in the West is arm's length, so that's typically where they'll begin as well. And I think part of the problem is people look at kata, then they reinterpret it from what I would call consensual sparring distance. So when people spar, if they kick, for example, they go, well, I don't want to be so close, you can just throw a kick. I'm going to create a bit of a gap. Now I've got that reactionary gap and we're going to move around and things. And then people look at the kata and they go, well, why haven't you got your hands up in a guard? And why have you got these stances? Why aren't you being nice and light on your feet? And it's because it's a different type of fighting.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So if you understand, you're very close, there's a good chance they're going to have a hand on you. You need some kind of stability. And there's no point having a hand in a passive guard if it can be active, clearing limbs and telling you where he is and, all that kind of stuff you see. So it's weird. I've trained with people who don't do kata, who don't do karate, but their methods are so close to mine, we can kind of train together. And then I've trained with karateka who do kata, but because they never cover that distance, they don't delve into the kata. They do the kata and then they do consensual sparring at a distance. Yeah. And I've just have little in common with them, despite officially we supposedly doing the same art,
Yeah. I feel like I really lucked out in the fact that my instructor, while he was never taught, and this was before the age of the internet in a real way, he was never taught like the applications of kata, any real applications of kata. So he would every once in a while show something. It's like, yeah, this is what they show. It's kind of bullcrap. So we just kind of move on. But his self-defense was like really good self-defense. When I moved over and after getting my black belt with him, I mean, he's still, as far as I'm concerned, my primary trainer at this point. But when we moved and started training with other guys as well, I could not get behind what they were doing, especially a lot of karate guys. I stopped training with a lot of those guys just because it was horribly ineffective on what they were teaching. Because, like you said, their applications of kata was at that sparring distance, and it was just
well, it gets reinterpreted. Historically, the karate that spread was the karate that was going to be popular in the Japan of the 1930s. So judo's really popular, kendo's really popular. They're vastly trying to increase the military. Martial arts are regarded as something old-fashioned and out of date and not something that would be fitting for Japanese youth. But Kano, the founder of judo, goes, yeah, but you can use this to make strong bodies and strong minds and useful members of society. So, and for the military as well, we want fit young men and women for our recruits, so then the karate guys just copy that model. So they don't teach the applications because nobody cares. That's not the objective anymore, And then, of course, they've still got these things. They've still got these katas, and then they go, well, what are these for? And they reinterpret them through karate versus karate sparring, which is a type of combat they're doing. But if you read the old masters, when they talk about sparring, they'd start with their arms touching because it would all be close range. Funakoshi talks about grappling to unconsciousness or submission. You talk about, pinning people to the ground, and he'd try and fight his way back to his feet. Multiple people would try and grab him, and he'd use techniques to keep them away. Motobu talks about how kata and kumite were always taught side by side. Funakoshi, sparring does not exist apart from the kata, but for the practice of the kata. Again, another one from Motobu, kumite is an actual fight where we use the techniques of the kata to grapple with an opponent. Their sparring was very close range,
Yeah.
And when you interpret the kata from that perspective, it makes sense. But when you're trying that long-range consensual fighting stuff, not so much, So I think once people get their head around that, and because I always think when people say, this works, that doesn't work, what works for what?
Yeah.
Works for what's the objective? Because like a jumping, turning back kick isn't going to work in self-defense. It's not a good idea.
Yeah.
But if you're in a taekwondo tournament, have at it.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
It'll work just fine. It depends on what your objective is.
We do quite a bit of stuff actually on TikTok, where Kylie is our primary face. We do a lot of like child abduction stuff and just kid self-defense stuff over there because it's a younger demographic. The thing that aggravates me the most is just the comment that will come through that says, that don't work. No explanation, no nothing. It's just, that don't work.
It's like, would you like to demonstrate to us how that doesn't work? Really, come here. We'd love for you to teach us, Grandmaster.
I've used that line on the internet a lot. Thank you for teaching me, Sensei. He's been sarcastic. So I'm all for discussion and debate. So if someone
absolutely
asks a question or has a concern, that's entirely legit. But those kind of, that wouldn't work. That's a meaningless comment. Engage in a discussion with me. You know what I mean? Exactly. Show me how you do it differently. So yeah, keyboard warriors, right? It's the downside of the internet.
Yeah, but we wouldn't have platforms at all if it wasn't for people like that either. So there's that. So
yeah, they all help the algorithm. All interactions, the algorithm doesn't care.
By all means, keep commenting. It's like that. Then you just start seeing how long you can keep the discussion going. So the algorithm's like, oh wow, lots of engagement.
So that's spoken like the younger generation, because that hadn't occurred to me till this very moment.
Yeah, 13 and 19, and they have helped me out a lot in that respect. So
he's just like, I really want to comment back. I'm like, okay, I mean, do it, but don't give them any anger or anything like that. Just keep them talking. Let them run themselves in a circle, and meanwhile, just enjoy the benefits from the algorithm.
I also sometimes conversations like that, they help if anyone else reads it as well, though.
Yeah.
So sometimes you can tell this person might be trolling, but I'll engage because somewhere within that there's a valid point they've raised. So I want to discuss that in case someone else reads it. You know what I mean? But it's no one to break it off. You know what I mean? So it's okay. You're getting more out of this than I am now. I know TikTok's a thing. No. I have no idea, not on there, don't know what it does.
We shunned it for a long time. We were like people dancing in the middle of stores. We don't want any part of that. But people kept on getting onto us. They're like, you really need to do some self-defense on TikTok. And we're just going, no.
Yeah, we finally gave in, and we did a couple things. When Kylie started doing the child abduction stuff, we went from like 0 to like 500,000 followers. So
Wow.
It blew up really, really quick for us.
And it's funny when you get that kind of following, how you get your loyal followers, and whenever someone posts a stupid comment, sometimes you don't even have to say anything because your keyboard warriors attack them, and you're just like, well, this is awesome, we have an army. We don't know anything about it.
It's a great thing about I say there can't have been a better time to learn martial arts than now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
that's the truth.
Yeah, because in our days, just speaking to Brian here, because the pre-internet people, you'll know that you could get magazines once a month, occasionally seminars, books if you could find them, and now, 1,000,001 instructional videos are just a tap of your fingers away. So, yeah, but the people coming to the dojo are a lot more educated than they used to be. We get people coming in specifically knowing, I want to learn karate, and I want to learn this kind of karate, and I've researched you, and I know what it is you do, and this is what we want to do. You see, it's so much better than it used to be. The downside is there's all that noise. The good stuff can get lost in the massive, 1,001 tent dance posting ridiculous stuff.
And then you've got the people who just believe anything they read or see online, and so you could be teaching a technique that you have pressure tested so many times, and then they're like, well, this one person said it didn't work, so I've got to completely throw that out. We're like, have you actually tried it? Have you worked it up, seen if it works for you? Because any technique you find, you'll find someone who says it doesn't work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing with that as well is it's one of the lines I use at the seminars as well, saying that there isn't a technique that will work 100% of the time against 100% of people that's 100% appropriate for all contexts.
Right.
Because if we find that technique, we can all just learn it and go home. Martial arts is done. It all just comes down to who does that magic technique first. Yeah. But as far as I'm aware, every single technique in existence can be counted. You can say like a solid left hook is a great technique, but there'll be always someone saying, but you can put your arm in the way. You could. You could. There's no technique that's perfect. Yeah. I always tell my students, it's only ever 100% zero when you've either escaped or he's unconscious. All the other time, you just want to make sure that your odds of winning are higher than 50%. That's what you're trying to do. I call it fighting downhill. You need to make sure you're fighting downhill. You're doing smart things that make it easier for you and harder for them. But they could do something wild and lucky and catch you with it, and that's just the way it is. Fights are always, there's an element of luck. There's always an element of luck.
There absolutely is.
The thing that I guess is the most important and one of the hardest things to get across to people is that we're not training you the techniques that you are going to use if something happens. We're giving you options so that when you see an opportunity, you know what will work for it. Mm-hmm. Like when you're in the middle of a fight, you may not be able to use a palm heel that we teach. It may not work, but if you have the opportunity and that's open, then we want you to know how to do it so you have that option. Yeah, and I was really encouraged with the seminar that we did with some kids on Saturday because we were going through and they were asking some questions that we had extra time. Like they were such a group that we had extra time to cover some extra stuff, and they were asking some questions, and they're like, well, what if this happens? And so I'm standing there and I was giving them options, and I had someone's arms trapped, and they were like, that would be a really good position for a hammer fist. I was like, yes. I was like, I love you guys because they're seeing openings and they're like, this is something that you taught us that we could do here. And I didn't have to say anything. I was so encouraged because they got it. They got that they're looking for what fits where. Yeah. What they can use.
Yeah, so, no, that's really good. I wrote it's a short article on my website a while ago for this. It was called It Depends and Other Scary Things, right? Because I thought, and you know, if you think of martial arts movies, I think this is part of the problem. So I'm going to date myself here and refer to Karate Kid. But, you know, if you think of pretty much any martial arts movie, right, that there's normally a magic technique that the good guy learns that no can defend, and then he wins. You know what I mean? So I think sometimes there's this expectation that we should be able to find the technique that will always work. You know, and when you say to people, you know, what if, you go, well, it depends, or it might not work, or you need a backup to that. You know what I mean? There's never a 100% answer. I think for a lot of martial artists, they don't want to hear that. You know, they don't want to hear that not every technique will work every time. You know, I mean, on your best day, I mean, unscientifically, I would say that on your best day, 60% of what you throw won't have the effect you hope for. Yeah. You know, I mean, it's just the way it is, you know, and, you know, it's great. Obviously, the kids are thinking of, you know, okay, yeah, I can fit a hammer fist in here. I love the fact it's a hammer fist as well, because I love hammer fists.
I love it. I was telling them, I was like, a hammer fist is a really great technique, especially for kids, just because it can be done from so many different angles, and it doesn't take a lot of muscle memory because we're used to moving our arms this way.
There's a theory about that as well. I remember reading this book that just hardwired into us as human beings. You know, if you know, when we're frightened, people make their hands into fists, which obviously can be used for clubs. But the other thing it does, if you've got hold of anything, you grip it tighter. Mm-hmm. You know, as human beings, we've got no natural weapons. But if you've got a club, a rock, a stick, you're going to hold on to it. And if you watch, you know, untrained people fight, their action tends to be like we would call it windmilling here, you know, when people windmill. So that natural kind of clubbing action is one that comes innate to us. So I think the hammer fist is one of the closest action to that. So it's easy to train it into people, you know. I remember one of my DVDs, there was a guy in the US did a review on it, and he wrote me a private, he really liked it, he wrote me a little private letter to say what he'd seen in it. And he said, oh, I really like this. I liked how you did this. And then he goes, and one thing I did notice is you really like hammer fist. And I, what? And I watched the video back, and about every 80% of the times when I'm demonstrating the escape, there's some, I've done the Kata bit, there's some extra hammer fist gets thrown in there. Because, yeah, it's a great shot. You know what I mean? There's something quite primal about it. I like it.
There is. You're correct. There definitely is. We kind of veered off subject a little bit, which we do that all the time on the podcast. But as far as what was you taught from when being taught kata, was you taught the bunkai and good applications from that from the very beginning? Did you have that kind of experience?
Yeah, not to the degree that I do it now. You know what I mean? But because I've really kind of specialized in that area.
Yes.
But I wasn't taught nonsense. You know what I mean? So, you know, you see the things like, oh, this will block a kick and a punch at the same time.
Right.
That was never taught. And we were taught solid applications on certain motions. You know what I mean? So, yeah, so that it was left as an open question a lot of the time. You know, so, you know, you think about this. And the more I thought about it, the more I kind of got into it. But I started to realize that there wasn't nothing between the close range self-defense stuff and then what was been recorded in the katas. I started to see the patterns a little bit. It's one of my brain's many misfunctions is that, you show me three things, I'm looking for the pattern between those three things. You know what I mean? I started to look at the kata and I started to spot, these themes developing here. And then you start doing a little bit of the historical research, and there's a lot written, not so much about the applications, but there's a lot written about what stances mean, what angles mean, what hands are doing. So you start to take this knowledge that I've gained on what real fights are like. I'd learnt the kata and I had the historical stuff. And from that point onwards, it all starts to kind of piece together, you see. So I was in my early 20s when I really started looking at it. I want to get this down. And then, it was a kind of slow start. And then it kind of just took off, like you reach that critical mass where it's almost like I've learnt the language now. I can kind of understand them a lot better. And it all started to kind of come into. I'm still doing it now, still learning new things about kata now. But the overall approach has remained pretty solid for over 20 years now.
Okay. That was something I was kind of really curious about, because I was just kind of wondering how you got to that point where you specialized in, because as me when coming up going well, this is kind of this is kind of this, and I just was throw it out the door, where you took that and then said, let's go deeper because there has to be something here.
Yeah, and because on seminars and books and articles and things, but people see the finished product. They don't see, I don't turn up a seminar going, here's an half-assed idea I haven't thought through fully. Yeah. I tend to keep those to myself, right? But there's plenty of that, you know what I mean? So it wasn't like there was this road to Damascus moment where I suddenly go, oh, I get it now. You know what I mean? It's been a slow process, but the stuff you share publicly is the stuff you think, no, I'm confident about this. Yeah. This has been tried, tested, it's logical, it makes sense. Lots of people have learned it and can make it work. So this is what I want to share with you. And the aim with that is always to help people get up to speed quicker than I did. Mm. That's the aim. And you know that from the way that I like to teach. I don't like to go, here's an application for move 1, now move 2, now move 3. It's always, and this is why this movement would be applied this way. And this is why it works from a combative point of view. And this is the language or the code, if you like, of kata. This is how it's explaining how it works. This is what the stance means. This is what the arms mean. So hopefully people can kind of pick it up and run with it themselves. And people generally can, I think.
Yeah. And that's one thing I thoroughly enjoyed when we had you for the seminar. Because that was something that your approach to teaching all of that was just really, really good and helped it stick a lot better than I expected.
Oh, good. I'm pleased. I always say this as well, though, that people who've seen the YouTube videos or the DVDs, they've read articles, that'll take them so far. But when I've got the time to go into more detail, so you're not thinking, this book has to have a certain word count because you can't sell a book that's 6 inches thick, right? Nor can you sell a DVD that's 10 hours long. At some point, or you've got to. You're limited by the medium, but teaching in person, I always say that the people who've trained with me in person will then go back to that material to see it with different eyes, because I've got more time to connect those threads for people, and that personal interaction helps. You can see how people are doing it. Yeah,
they actually have.
I'm there to answer the questions exactly. Yeah, rather than trying to assume, because I have seen that as well, where I think I've explained something particular well in writing or on video. And then people go, yeah, I've got it. And I'll visit the club and think, no, you haven't. There's a key component missing, which is my fault as much as theirs.
Yeah, we've seen that on some of the things that we put out there as well. And that's funny because to us, it makes perfect sense, but.
It's like we look back questions because they have on that.
Yeah, but I think that's the thing, because you're always doing it. It's very difficult to put your own knowledge out of your own mind. You're always looking at it as someone who thoroughly understands it, you see. And sometimes it's remarkable how things can be misconstrued. That's why, for my knife defense stuff, I made the decision I'm only ever teaching that in person. Because I don't want to put something out in the big wide world that people get wrong, will misinterpret it, and then someone could get badly hurt as a result. So there's certain things that I got now, just, you learn it from me directly or you don't learn it.
Yeah.
Like, I never thought I would have to explain to someone that if they want this technique to work, they have to move faster than a snail. I didn't think that should have had to have been clarified. I thought, oh, well, they're going to assume that this should be done at 90% speed.
Sarcasm on this side, so.
Yeah, no, it is difficult. One of the other problems we get is at least I do, is different things mean we have no common terminology.
I know.
So if someone was to say to me, kata doesn't work, I'd go, well, I might agree with you or disagree with you, but tell me what you mean by kata. Because if you mean doing an imaginary move against someone who's attacking you from 10 feet away, I agree with you. You know what I mean? But if you mean what I mean by kata, it's the same with sparring. You know what I mean? It's another one. It's what type of sparring do you mean? Some people are sparring is not relevant to self-defense. What kind of sparring? How are you sparring? What are you allowing when you spar? There's just not. I mean, karate is another example. I mean, we have a common term, but approaches are radically different. A friend of mine came up with this brilliant analogy where he said karate now is like the term athletics. You could be a shot putter and a marathon runner are both doing athletics, but they're as far apart from each other as they could be. So you can have two people, I'm doing karate. Yeah, okay, I need more than that.
Yeah.
Exactly how are you doing it? How are you training it? Because it might be effective, it might not be. I need to see what you're doing.
And then it becomes a problem for, it becomes a divide between a lot of different forms of martial arts too, because you get, I've talked to plenty of people who do really great jujitsu, and I'm a fan of the stuff that they've been doing because I'm over here going, yes, I understand that works. And then they look at me and they're like, well, what form do you do? And I'll say Kyokushin karate, and they're like, because what they've seen of it is the complete sport side, no punching to the head, things like that. I'm over here going, yeah, you don't understand how my instructor teaches it. It's completely different from instructor to instructor. And you can't really judge it until you've actually seen it in practice. And seen how it's applied.
No, that's it's really common. I have the same thing. But I think it's the same of any. I get that question a lot on the emails. I want to take karate. Which style should I do? And I say it doesn't matter. Don't judge the style. Go to the club and see how they're training that style. Because I've seen, incredibly good and incredibly bad of any style you can mention. Not just within karate, but the same thing. I've seen great Thai boxers and awful ones, great jiu-jitsu guys and awful ones. You really got to, it's all hands-on. Yeah, the style labels get less and less important, I think, these days.
Yeah, and they should. They really should. I wanted to ask you a question because of something you said earlier. It's just kind of a fun question. But you were mentioning that there's no better time, and I completely agree. There's no better time to learn martial arts than right now. If you were not right now and could be a student at any point in time of martial arts, when would that be?
Yeah, no, I'd love to. The guy I'd really love to train with would be Itosu. So late 1800s, early 1900s. And the reason for that is because he's an old school karate practitioner who got the ball rolling to what karate eventually became. So I think to be able to get a view of that transition and that change would be absolutely fascinating.
Yeah,
what I mean? Yeah, that would be the guy I would love to be able to train with, given the opportunity. And assuming in this, this scenario we're concocting, I'd love to be able to tell him how it all worked out and see what he thought. What I mean? So this art that's been practiced by a couple of hundred people on Okinawa, just so you know, there's going to be billions of people practicing this. Do you know what I mean? All over the world. It's going to be one of the biggest martial arts there's ever been. But things like, and we're going to have competitions, and we're going to wear gis, and we're going to have belts, and things that he wouldn't even. We're going to do what? And then for about 100, whatever it's been, for 50, 60 years, bunkai won't be practiced. Why? What happened there? I'd love to be able to have that conversation with him. You see, just to see what he intended and what he didn't.
And then for you would get the opportunity of seeing what it was like then.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I'd be really interested in it. Well, the thing is, of course, things move on. I think it's, especially traditional martial arts, it's sometimes really bad for, if it's older, it's better. You know, and if you think of some of the modern sports science we've got, the modern equipment we've got, the way of training we've got, I think in some ways we go back in time and be really impressed. And in other ways we think, well, why are you doing this? Who thought that would be a good idea? You know what I mean? Yeah, why are you wandering around lifting jars? We've got weights and TRXs and kettlebells, and there's we've got all kinds of really cool stuff we can show you.
Yeah, I've often thought that if we take any of the old karate masters and bring them to this point in time, they would not have stuck with the same training methods.
Oh no.
And I think so many people get stuck in that, where they think, well, it's got to be done like that. It baffles me. They were doing the best things they had at the time available to them.
Yeah, so I know if all I had was rope and straw, I'd be hitting the makiwara. but I've got high density foam, and I've got bob dummies, and I've got punch bags, so I'll use them as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Because I've got that kit. It's one of these things. Focus mitts. We do a lot of focus mitt drills, and not so much now. But I remember in the early days when I started sharing these, some people within the really uber traditional karate community that's boxing equipment. And I thought the only reason it's not karate equipment historically, the only reason we don't have traditional focus mitt drills is because they didn't have focus mitts. You know what I mean? If I went back in time and said to me, Thompson, look what we've got here. Whoa! These things are amazing. You can move and hit with them, So I always think what we want to have happen is 100 years time, 200 years time, they said, oh yeah, these, back in the early 2000s, these traditional focus mitt drills were developed. You know what I mean? Now, of course, we use these hologram whatevers. But for the time, it was all they had.
We had.
So I think that, I think that's the thing is I am definitely a traditional martial artist, but the true tradition has been one of constant change. It's never stayed the same. If you look from generation to generation, it was only when they stopped testing by result. When being good at kata became an end in itself.
Right.
You know what I mean? That kind of stuff. That's only at that point that people go, no, nothing must change, because they need something to measure it against. But to me, if you're measuring against, does this work or not? That's the same measure the old masters use. So if they learned a technique that was, oh, that's a good technique, they wouldn't go, well, that's not karate. They just go, well, it is now. You know what I mean? We're having it, we're bringing it in.
And that's that's something I even looked at with a guy that helps around here some. We were talking one day, and I said, I'm not even sure if what we do, some people would call karate anymore, because we have that Kyokushin background. We have a lot of really good kicks, but I mean, we've done a lot of boxing. I worked in boxing instruction. We do a lot of boxing. I did jiu-jitsu. We do a lot of jiu-jitsu stuff with our stuff. And so I looked at him. I said, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people who would not even call what we do karate at this point. And at that point in time, I was like, I don't even know.
And not to mention gun and knife defense.
Yeah. Well, there's one. I mean, there's no historical firearm defense because they didn't have them. You know what I mean? So, things change. See, I did that. That's why the Wado label, that was a style I started in, but I dropped that quite a while ago because I realized that label no longer reflects what it is I'm doing, because I've had instructors from other styles and, the judo influence and the boxing and the kickboxing influence, and you just kind of bring it in and make it your own. So I it's definitely karate still.
Yeah.
But, so the line I always use is I say I'm a martial artist first, I'm a karateka second, and I have no idea what style I am. That's the line.
I like that.
Well, when people ask, I say I'm a martial arts instructor.
Yeah.
Because I don't like the preconceived notions that everyone has about the 5 seconds experience they had with the basement instructor.
Yeah, no, it's the same, and I've always done that thing as well. Anyone shows me something that I like, it'll become part of what we do. I don't care where I got it from. You know what I mean? If it fits with the way we're doing things, it fits with our objective, whether it's a training drill or a technique or a way of explaining something, I'm having it. As a German friend of mine said that, he goes, I take what works and I call it karate.
Yeah. I was trying to remember, I know I heard that one from you. And it was like right after I had that conversation with this guy that was listening to one of your podcasts, and I heard you say that on the podcast. I couldn't remember who you said it, but Okay.
Yeah, it's Christian Wiedewaart. He's excellent instructor, but he has the same view. You know, he breaks down the katas, he does all the applications to the katas, but, you know, you show him a nifty technique or a good way of training, and it'll be part of what he does next week.
Yes.
You know, it's just, he's not going to, that's not our style.
Yeah.
It's not the Ed Parker line I always like, where he said, you know, when people talk about keeping things pure, and he said, pure karate is when pure fist meets pure face.
Yeah.
I can buy him with that.
Now I've heard you talk about it, and I know they've heard a little bit from me in that, but the 4 stages or the 4 levels or however you want to approach that of kata.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear a little breakdown for that.
Yeah. Well, first thing is,
I know they've heard a little bit from me, but you know,
I really regret using the word stages when I wrote about this, because it was a wrong word. So, but I'm stuck with it now because everyone talks about the 4 stages, and I've got articles and videos on it. But I think stages is probably the wrong word, because it infers that when you move on to stage 2, you're not doing stage 1 anymore. So I think a better way to think of it, if I had my time again, I would call it the 4 aspects of kata practice. You know what I mean? So, and when you look at the way that the old masters viewed kata, all 4 of these elements are there. So from the what we would call the classical generation now, Miyagi's, Motobu's, Funakoshi's, those people. They may not have expressed it the same way I did, but again, that pattern brain I've got kind of looks at what they're all saying and go, I can summarize that into 4 things. So we've got the solo form is part of what we do. So that we practice the solo form because it's the repository of knowledge. It's what ensures a continuity of information from one generation to the next, that when done right. And it also gives us a supplementary form of solo training. So the solo form is important. Next step up is what we would now refer to as the bunkai, the applications. So you start drilling that with a partner in various ways. So you drill the applications. So that would be the second stage. The third stage is that you identify the underlying principles being demonstrated by the applications and learn to adapt and vary them. So that's one where some people kind of struggle a little bit. But as an example, in the kata, we often move at angles. And nowadays people think it's because the enemy's attacking you from an angle, but the old masters were quite clear in their writing. No. It's the angle you are attacking the enemy from. So I have 2 rules around that. Keep the enemy in front of you, but do not be in front of the enemy. Move towards what you know and away from what you don't know. So if I touch his arm, I want to be close to that arm, and the arm I've got no idea where it is. You know, and I don't just want to do that in the way the kata shows me. I want to make that habit. So I do it all the time in all ways. You know what I mean? Because techniques are limited, principles are infinite. So we need to kind of understand the principles that are at play. And then the 4th stage is that we gain live experience of doing it. So we have a variety of drills that allow us to practice all of this against a living, breathing, resisting opponent. And then, of course, when you've done that, when you come back to doing the solo form, it means more to you. Because every time you do the movement, it's triggering these memories of these 1,001 times you've done that technique against the person. You know, it reinforces it all. So in brief, it's do the kata, do the bunkai, identify the underlying principles so you can adapt and vary and gain live experience of doing it. If you're doing those 4, then kata works. And generally speaking, lots of people do the kata, less do the bunkai, even fewer identify the principles, and very few drill it live. But if you do all 4, which was the traditional way, that's when it really starts to work and make sense for me.
I've heard you say before that really, as you're rotating through things that you are working on, you do not separate kata from self-defense when teaching.
No.
Is that?
No.
I'm just curious here on this one. This is just from as an instructor thing here. Do you find that like enough of the katas fit everything that you're needed for self-defense?
Yeah, it depends on teaching. So that would be the first thing. So if I'm teaching a self-defense course to people for a few weeks, I'm not going to talk about kata.
Well, yeah.
I mean, yeah. But if we're talking about martial artists who are in it for the long haul and want to learn a high, a degree, my favorite quote for that is Thompson. So he wrote this in 1908 where he said, so kata, karate he's talking about, but remember the karate of his time didn't deal without fighting another karateka at a distance, right? So when he talks about karate, he's talking about the karate of the kata. And he said, karate is not intended to be used against a single adversary. It's a method of avoiding injury by using the hands and feet should one by chance be confronted by a villain or ruffian. So in better English, it's not for a consensual duel. It's for keeping yourself safe from criminals. And my experience is when you look at the methods of the kata, there's not the thickness of a hair between what's in those and what I've seen and experienced being done in the reality-based self-defense world. It's the same stuff. It's the exact same stuff. The only thing that has is it's a little bit older, and we've got this repository of kata. So when I'm teaching my students, there's some things like, like we talked about, weapons have changed. I need to make them aware of the law of the land and stuff, which obviously aren't recorded by the kata. De-escalation skills, verbal skills aren't in the kata. But when it comes to the physical side of it, I find that for my martial arts students, the kata gives them all they need. That'll give them all the close range skills. With what, I might add one or two little extra bits in that I found cool from other places, So there's a little bit of the judo for the ground stuff in particular. You know what I mean? Yeah. The karate is light on the. There's not a great. If you look at Itaman talks about ground fighting, and so does Itosu. But in Itaman's book, he said that the ground fighting of karate is not as well developed as that of judo. So to me, he's okay if I can learn something from judo, then hold escapes and getting back to your feet from judo or something. I'm going to add in from there. But 98% is all just kata based stuff.
Okay. I was just kind of curious because I'd heard you say that before, and I wanted to hear a little more of an explanation on that. Yeah. And I guess it's just because I am not to that point yet where my brain thinks everything through the lens of kata as far as it goes.
Well, it's our syllabus too, because we've got the other things that we do. So they've got the consensual fighting skills and everything else that we'll learn, and the pad drills and all that kind of stuff. But the kata is the central part of it. And my own experience of the kata is, as you progress through them, there's a lesson plan through each. So Pinan Shodan leads into Pinan Nidan, which leads into Pinan Sandan. There's a lesson plan there. So I found that having that as our spine and following that lesson plan works pretty well. So. Yeah.
And do you still do the exact same versions of the katas that you did coming up?
Yeah. No.
Drop pieces or made alterations to anything?
No. A couple of times I was taught a couple of different versions of the same form.
Right.
So eventually, I decide on the one I'm going to teach. Okay. Subtly different variations of different instructors. So you decide on the one you're going to get. But no, I've kept them exactly the same. There are some little changes that left to my own devices I could make. So, for example, I always learned the kata that all the kicks would be low, like knee height, with the exception of front kicks. Front kicks were always done middle level, but all the side kicks were done knee height, you see. But I always thought most of the time when doing these applications, although in the modern version of the kata's kicking middle level, you're kicking shins and knees. Right. So there would be an argument for, well, why don't I do the kata with that kick to the shins and knees? And the main reason for that is because my students interact with other karateka, so they need that common framework. I live in an area where there's no universities. So normally we get students at kind of 18, 19, and then they're off to university. Well, I don't want them to turn up at the university club and go, what on earth are your katas? You know what I mean? What on earth? So they just, they'll just walk in and they go, oh, yeah, we've seen that before. Know how everyone does that. So, I just keep exactly the same.
Yeah. No, I was just curious. I'm looking at, we do all the real traditional versions of the Pinans that from Kyokushin. And there's just a few, extra moves in some of those that's not in other styles, especially, for us Pinan Ni. And I'm looking at going, I give the best reason I can, but I don't get it myself, to be completely honest with you at times. And I just kind of look at other versions longingly of that kind of think maybe we should just do something like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think all styles have those. As time's gone on, it's not just combative functions that come in, other things come in. So you'll get styles that will consistently kick high because it's hard to do and athletically demanding.
Right.
Fine. So as long as you know that when you do the application, you're going to kick low, Yeah. One of the oddities of the style I started in is movements that were originally middle level. He raised them in height because his view was it's easy to get the power in when it's in line with your body, because it's moving from your core. When you raise it a little bit higher towards his head, your body alignment has to be slightly better. So he did it as a technical thing. But we have to be aware that in some of these applications, the hands should be lower than they are when we do them in the kata. So, but we know that. I always say it's just like people's handwriting.
Yeah.
You might look at my handwriting first and go, "What the hell's that?" And you realise, oh, that's how he does his G's. Okay, I understand what he's saying now. It's the same thing.
Yeah, I got you. All right. So as we are wrapping up, if you could please give everybody your information, how they can follow you and find your stuff.
Yeah, so the first thing is the spelling of my name, because it's confusing, right? So the Iain is spelled I-A-I-N, so it's a Scottish spelling. Americans often assume it's Lane, with a lowercase L, But I had a Scottish grandmother who was devastated. Her first grandchild was born on the wrong side of the English-Scottish border, and by this much, say Scotland's just over there. So, English by birth, but Scottish by heritage. So he's definitely having the name Iain. So, and then Abernethy, it's Abernethy. So again, the US spelling is more commonly Nathy rather than Nethy, but yeah. So, but you can find, I'm on Instagram at Iain Abernethy, Twitter at Iain Abernethy, Facebook is Iain Abernethy, and iainabernethy.com or .co.uk will take you to the website. So once you've got the name, I'm really easy to find. It's just getting the spelling right.
Yeah. I've also heard your, when you go into full accent mode, you might be a little hard to understand. I would love to kind of maybe end with that in some way.
Yeah.
Say something really quick.
Yeah. So here's one for you, because I did this years ago, because people can never quite place the accent.
Right.
So because there's no famous Cumbrians, so no one's ever heard this accent.
The closest I've gotten was I watched Doctor Who, and David Tennant trying to do an English accent is like the closest thing I got to you.
Yeah, that was because I can see how that would work. But what I did for this has gone back me 10 years in my podcast, I said, if anyone can understand this sentence,
I remember that.
You remember that, yeah? If you can remember if you can interpret the sentence, I'll give you a free set of DVDs, right? So, and I just thought of a sentence that used various Cumbrian words, so that would be a good example. So it was. He smacked me mad and he kept it with a kepi, so I clicked the get and scopped them hour. Right now, to me, that's perfect English. But that's all.
And I remember when you talked and you told what it was, and I still can't remember it. So, clicked is grabbed. So he smacked me Mara, so smacked hit. Mara is a local word for friend. So, you'll go as me Mara, or is a Mara of mine, so friend. The keppet is the word we use for ear. A kebby is a big stick. So I hit my friend in the ear with a big stick. So I clicked, got hold of the contemptuous person. Right? And scopped is a local word for throw, which I was in my 30s before I realised no one else in England used that. I'd use it all the time. I'd use it when teaching and got confused looks, and then realised it was a local word. So scopped them hour would be throw them over. Yeah, but there's loads. I'll tell you what I did as well. I was in, because we've got the history of this place. We've had lots of different people come in. So we've got bits of Norse and Irish and all kinds of stuff. But I was in Norway and I saw a sign written in Norwegian. So I'm teaching in Norway. And I said, "Oh, is that children playing?" He said, "Well, I didn't know you could speak Norwegian." I went, "No, that's really close to the local slang." So it was the English, the Cumbrian would be Bairns Laken. So Bairns is children and Laking is playing, and it was very similar in Norwegian. So there we go, 1,000 years since the Vikings left, but they've left those words, obviously. Yeah, so this is my posh voice, believe it or not.
Very cool. We feel about the same way when we talk to people from up north in America.
Well, I have the same. So I would recognise like a New York accent as being distinct, and I can recognise Southern accents, as being distinct. But then after that, it's American.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So I can't quite work out the difference.
We feel the same way.
So I think the one I remember was, what did they call him, the actor? Russell Crowe in Robin Hood. So I don't know if you've seen that film. It's an old film, and he was an English accent in that film. Now, I'm sure it is fine if you're not from here, but for someone who lives here, you can hear the accent drifting slightly. So he sounds always a bit like Liverpool. That sounds a little bit like Northern Ireland now. Oh, it's got those like Manchester tint. So I'm always really impressed when people can get accents down that well. When I hear people not from England do English accents, I'm like, man, you've really got that. I'd be interested to know if it works the other way around. I won't even try. But we get a lot of American movies and music, right? Loads.
Right.
You know what I mean? So we're exposed to it an awful lot,
yeah. All right. Well, I thank you very, very much. I've thoroughly enjoyed this.
Yeah, me too. This is fun. Yeah. So, happy to do one ever again at any point again in the future.
Okay.
It's good. So if anyone has any, listens to this or watches it, if they have any supplementary questions, we can chat again sometime. It'd be fun.
Yeah, that would be great.
Thank you for listening to the Impact Defense Podcast. If you'd like to learn more about how to keep yourself safe, check out the articles, videos, courses, and seminars at www.impactdefensenc.com. We also do training for security teams, churches, businesses, groups, and more. Stay sharp, stay focused, and train hard.